strikes the side of the frame of the vehicle of the car, the bullet flattens from the steel, turns into a disc, and ricochets towards the president's rib cage, and it enters as a sharp disc and lodges itself into the lung. Centimeters, millimeters, whatever, from the heart.
Mm-hmm.
That ricocheting motion off the car frame to the ballistics issue is eventually what was the grace that gave the surgeons the ability to remove the bullet, and the president survived.
Right.
Hinckley made a bad shot. Bottom line.
Okay.
So it's not, that wasn't was that act of God, or was that?
Okay.
He just made a bad shot.
So what we're saying over here, and this is not actually this topic. This is actually what we were discussing last week. That it depends. Sometimes that bad shot is a product of the person's choice. Sometimes that bad shot is something that's been implanted in him that was Hashem's manipulating events to make sure that he wasn't going to fulfill his mission. So let me give you a simpler example.
Okay.
I saw an interview with a militant in Palestine, and he was a rocket launcher. And in his interview, he said, the world is making fun of us now because they think we can't aim. He said, we are among the best, most trained, accurate shooters of rockets in the world. He says, the fact that a rocket is going exactly where it needs to go, and that within 2 seconds of its landing, it goes off course, he says there is no explanation for that. Some people are going to say it's the wind. Some people are going to say it's some atmospheric this or that. Somebody's going to say there's some fault in the materials. He says, I'm not telling you that any of those things are accurate because we are very good at what we do.
I would say that's ego.
It might be, but it might also be true. There might be some truth to it. It might be that the fact that things happen to all, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which is more likely. The point is that we are learning here that there are definitely times in which a person's going to try to do something and Hashem's not going to let it work. How he's going to make it not work, there's millions of options how he's going to make it not work. But that doesn't change my choice. So if I choose to shoot Ronald Reagan, in heaven, I'm 100% accountable, even if I didn't end up killing him. Because my choice was to kill him, and I did everything I could to make that happen. The fact that Hashem didn't allow it to happen because I shot a little off, or the car moved, or someone turned, or the angle was different or something, that's Hashem's doing. I'm still going to be held accountable for taking that shot. So we have to understand that there's a higher power here that's always going to, I shouldn't say always, usually is going to mask itself and camouflage itself into the world of physics and human nature and all the other parts and pieces of science that are going to get involved and say this is what happened and that's what happened and this and that and the other thing. But the reality is that all of those things start somewhere also. And what we're learning here is that all those things, everything, starts from these spiritual kochos that are above, and they come down and manifest themselves here. Now, there are certain things that are 100% within our free will. That's for what we do. What ends up happening because of what we've done, that's out of our control. As the Mishnah says, it's not for you to finish the job. Everything that we do, we can only do so much. At a certain point, it's out of our hands whether it's actually going to accomplish what it needs to accomplish. So that's really what we're discussing here. So what you're saying is a slightly different question because that's really what we were talking about last week. But what you're saying is that, yeah, there are certainly times where we're going to attribute things to certain physical phenomena or scientific phenomena or whatever else it is. But there are also certain times where those physical things are really products of Hashem's manipulating events to make sure things go where they need to go and happen the way they need to happen. Yes?
Would that type of thing be called a nace?
Would that be called a nace? Was that a miracle? I don't know how to answer that question.
And then also
I don't know.
quickly, on the John Hinckley Jr. thing, let's say, of course, this is also after the fact, right? Let's say it was in his machshava that he did want to assassinate Ronald Reagan, but he overrode that inclination and said, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I want to do it really badly, but I have a proclivity to do this, but I'm going to take my thoughts and my urges, and I'm not going to do that action. Would he still be held accountable for the machshava that he wanted to kill Ronald Reagan, even though he overrode his urges to do that and did not?
Okay, that's a very good question. Your question is if someone wants to do something wrong and they decide to do it, but then they change their mind. So the answer is that the answer is no. They're definitely not held accountable, and on the contrary, they're actually going to be rewarded for making the proper choice in the end. The question that comes up is, let's say I decide to do something and I tried to do it and it didn't work. Am I going to be held accountable for that? So for that, we say it depends, actually. The Gemara says that it depends who you're talking about. If you're talking about a Jew who's trying to do something good and it doesn't work, they still get credit as if they did it. Okay, so if I get up at 6:15 in the morning because I want to come to shul and I get out and my car's dead and I just can't go, I get credit for going because it was out of my control. Now, could I have changed the battery last week and could I have parked it in the garage and all these other things? Yes, but at the end of the day, I didn't know about any of that. It's not held against me, and therefore it's out of my control. So I get credit for doing it. But if I wanted to do something bad, then as long as it's not idolatry, then we say it doesn't count. So if I wanted to get up at 6 in the morning to go kill somebody, and my car didn't start, I'm not going to be held accountable for that.
Or even at a higher level, I really want to have an inclination to kill somebody, but I'm not going to act out of it.
So again, a person is not going to be held accountable for that because they're making the proper choice.
I'm not going to get away with taking somebody out if you don't want to take them out.
And also won't stop you from getting to shul if you really want to get to shul, right? You call the Uber, right? But at the end of the day, if a person makes a decision, their decisions are what we are held accountable for. It's all about the decision. For the action, so the action, it depends. The action is if it was something I tried to do and I couldn't because of reasons that are beyond my control, then if it was something good, it's as if I did it. If it was something bad, it's not as if I did it except for idolatry. At least for Jews. How does mental illness figure into that? We're not judges. We're not judges. That's within Hashem's purview. That's certainly not in the realm of free choice. If a person has a mental illness. This is I'm telling you, I spent a long time on this line researching every book I could find to try to understand this the best I could. And he is going to talk about it more in chapter 2. Part 2, when we get there eventually. We should all live and be well till 120. About mental illness? Yeah, so the question was, if a person makes a decision because of a mental illness, where is the accountability there? So to that I said, we're not the judges. Only Hashem is going to judge, but I would assume that generally speaking, someone who has a mental illness is not completely within control of their own decisions from a judgment perspective, and therefore will certainly be held less accountable, if at all, for bad decisions. Again, like I said, we're not the judges. Hashem takes everything into account, and He creates His judgment based on all the factors. And obviously, none of us could ever do that. Hashem knows exactly what went into it, what were the venues out of it, how much control was He really in, how much did He bring this upon Himself, how much is this out of His control. Only Hashem makes those decisions. There's no way we could ever try to make a decision like that, a judgment like that. No way. Okay, all right, so let's just finish up over here. And from that which is from his decision making, that the movement will go from down to up. Meaning the things that we do down here, they can and often will affect the kochos that are above, and that will in turn come back down and affect things differently based on the actions that we've done and that we learned about last week, and we'll get into it more as we continue Mirza Hashem next week. All right, very good. Thank you for coming, everybody. I will humbly request that people make a concerted effort to come a little bit earlier so we get a little bit more time in. But looking forward to next week. That's right. All right.